Hello and welcome. This video will show you how to create a custom control in SwiftUI. The custom control we're going to create is a double-headed slider. Now, if you've not heard of that before, it's like a regular slider, only except letting you choose one value. It lets you choose two, a lower value and a higher value, and thus you can choose a range. This is what that looks like. So here's my double-headed slider. It looks like a regular slider in iOS, except instead of one thumb, it has two. And I can drag each thumb independently, and dragging the thumb on the left will change the lower value, dragging the thumb on the right will change the higher value. And you may wonder why this is useful. Well, here's an example. So this image is set to rotate to a random value every half a second, and it chooses an angle between the lower value that I've chosen and the upper value I've chosen in this slider. So if I make the slider have a small range, then the image will rotate in a very small range. If I want it to be able to rotate in a really broad range, well, I just drag the thumbs out to the end. If I only want it to face up, I use negative values. I only allow it to go from negative 90 to negative 10. If I want it to face right, I can do that. If I want to choose a particular value, I make the minimum and maximum the same, and the image stops rotating. So let's see how this is done. If I switch over to Xcode, you can see the view that we were just looking at. Some of it is not that interesting. There are a couple texts here and an image. This image has a couple interesting lines. First, this rotation effect takes a value that's a state variable on this view, and then this animation takes a duration of half a second, which is a constant. Now let's look at this value and these other two bindings here. That these bindings have to do with the rotation animation. The value is the actual rotation. The min and max values are the minimum and maximum values that the rotation can be. And then there's this timer, which is initialized when the view first appears, and it's scheduled to repeat every half second. And what it does is it sets the value to a random value between the minimum and maximum values that we've set. Now, where are the min and max values set? That's in the range slider here. The range slider is the control that you're going to be creating. It has two bindings, a min and a max, a range of allowed values, negative 90 to 90. You remember those were the min and max values that I could set in the UI. An optional step value of 5, and what that does is that makes it so that when I drag the slider, it steps in increments of 5. It also has an on editing changed closure that is called when the user first starts a drag and then when he ends the drag. And right now I'm just printing to the console. Two optional labels, a min label that appears on the left, a max label that appears on the right, and that's where I'm showing the min and max values in this. So there's the min label, there's the max label. So let's get started creating this thing. Okay, so our strategy is going to be to start out by trying to make something that looks like a regular iOS slider. And then we can modify it to have the features that we need. And we're going to start very simply. We're going to start with just the thumb, which is the little circular thing that you drag around. So I've already created a new SwiftUI application, and I'm going to create a new SwiftUI view. Call it double-headed slider. And I'm going to turn on preview. And the first thing I'm going to do, I don't want to look at all this Chrome. I want to just look at the view itself because I want to focus on that. So I'm going to change the preview layout to size that fits. And I'm just going to add a little bit of padding. And so now I have a focused work environment. I'm going to add a slider so I have something to look at that I can base my work on. And the slider is going to need a state var. And I'll just call it value, and it's a double. I'll make it equal to 0. And it needs a range, which will just be 0 to 1. And there's my slider view. Now, before I do anything else, I want to see this up close. So I'm going to hover my mouse over it and just pinch out and scroll over slowly. And now I can see the slider view in pretty close detail here. Now, first thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to add a circle right after the slider here, but I can't do that without it being a VStack, so here's a VStack, and now I'm going to add a circle, and it's going to be gigantic. I'll zoom out there. Okay, now, so let's change that. So let's say that frame width, oh, I don't know, maybe 20, height 20. Don't worry about alignment. That actually looks too small. Okay, so we want the thumb to be in about the same place as the thumb that we're trying to create. So let's change this value to 0.5 so that the slider's thumb is in the middle. Okay, now I can see that this is too small. 30. Okay, this is going to get annoying quickly, so let's create a constant here. Circle radius is a CG float, and we'll make it 15. Okay, self.circle radius times 2, height self.circle radius times 2. Resume. Boy, that looks close, but it's not perfect. Well, okay, we'll fix that soon, but let's change the foreground color to white and add a shadow radius 5. Boy, that looks pretty close. I don't think the size is quite right. It looks like it's still a little too big. Let's change this to an H stack. And so it's going to be on the end. So let's make the value 1.0. Now we're going to have to reset the preview. Okay, just a little bit smaller. Let's try circle radius of 13. I think that's as good as we're going to get. Maybe 13.5? Oh, that might be it. Okay. All right. The shadow isn't quite right. So I'm not going to make you sit through all of this. I did sort of pre-bake these already. So um, the shadow should be radius 4. With an x value of 0, y value of 2. That looks a little bit better. Now it's just a little bit too dark. So let's get the other shadow thing here. Okay, radius, shadow radius, 0. Oops. With just a slightly different color. Which is a UI color, a shade of white of 0.85, alpha of 1. Oops, what did I do? Oh. This, of course, all has to be inside of a SwiftUI color. Sometimes you have to preview a couple times. Again, not perfect, but good enough for our purposes. So I'm going to call the thumb done for now. Okay, so that's step 1 done. Basically, we just have a new project set up, and we have one piece of the new control that we're making, the thumb. Next time, we'll work on the bar that sits underneath the thumb. See you then.